When someone ignores you, it hurts. It's one of those quiet aches, the kind that doesn't leave a bruise but still throbs in the middle of your chest. It's a form of rejection that whispers, "You don't matter." And that's a hard message to sit with, because being seen is not a luxury, it's a fundamental human need. But here's the truth, and it's not a warm and fuzzy one. That sting, that silence, it's also a sign. It's a sign that a boundary is being drawn, either by them or by life itself. And as painful as it feels, that space can teach us something profound about who we are and what we deserve. Most of us, when we're ignored, don't just feel hurt, we feel shame. We start telling ourselves stories. I must have done something wrong. I must not be interesting enough. I must not be worth their time. The silence starts writing a narrative, one that often has very little to do with the actual person who ignored us and everything to do with the stories we've carried for years. We live in a world that often treats emotional pain like a personal failure. From a young age, we're taught that strength looks like stoicism, that crying means you're fragile, that being affected means you're overreacting, and that needing connection is somehow a flaw. But the truth is this: pain is not weakness. Pain is data. When someone ignores you and it stings, that's your body, your heart, your nervous system, all trying to tell you something. It's not just discomfort for the sake of discomfort, it's a signal. It's intelligence. It's the wisdom of your emotional life saying, something about this doesn't feel safe, something about this doesn't feel right. But instead of listening to that data, many of us go straight into shame. We think, why does this bother me so much? I should be over this. I should be tougher. We internalize the pain as a defect, as if the ache itself means we're doing something wrong. But what if we flipped that narrative? What if instead of judging the pain, we got curious about it? What if we asked, what is this trying to tell me? Where does this pain connect to an older wound I haven't healed? Is this pain about the present, or is it echoing something much deeper? See, pain doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And more than that, it makes you aware. It tells you where you care deeply. It tells you where your values are being challenged. It tells you when you're being treated in ways that violate your sense of self-worth, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. So when someone ignores you and you feel that ache, that tightness in your chest, that lump in your throat, don't rush past it. Don't minimize it. Sit with it. Ask it questions. Listen. Because that pain might be saying, you deserve to be seen. You're tired of pretending. You don't need anything. You've been silencing your needs for too long. And here's the real magic. When we stop labeling pain as weakness, we create space for healing. We begin to trust ourselves again. We stop outsourcing our self-worth to people who can't or won't show up for us. We start using our pain not to punish ourselves, but to protect ourselves. Pain, when we honor it, becomes a compass. It points us toward unmet needs. It shows us where to draw new boundaries. It helps us become more compassionate, not just with others, but with ourselves. So no, feeling hurt doesn't make you fragile. It means you're alive. It means you care. And caring, no matter how messy or vulnerable, is never weakness. It's courage in its purest form. Being ignored is more than just silence. It's psychological static. It's not just the absence of a text, the unanswered call, the quiet walk past you in the hallway. It's what that silence awakens inside of us. And for many of us, that silence is deafening because it reactivates something much older, much deeper, our shame stories. Let's talk about shame for a minute. Shame isn't the same as guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. It's that corrosive, quiet voice that whispers, you're not enough, you never were, and you never will be. Now, when someone ignores you, especially someone you care about, a partner, a friend, a family member, it can feel like confirmation of that voice. Suddenly, you're not just dealing with a person who's withdrawn. You're dealing with the narrative your shame is spinning behind the scenes. You start to wonder, what did I do wrong? Why am I not worth a reply? Am I too much or not enough? As everyone leave me eventually? Those aren't random thoughts. They're echoes of wounds, sometimes from childhood, sometimes from relationships where we were taught that love is conditional, that connection is earned, that being ourselves was too risky. And here's where it gets even harder. When our shame stories get triggered, we don't usually respond from our best selves. We either shrink, we go quiet, we pull back, we internalize the hurt and blame ourselves. Perform, we try to fix it, over-explain, chase the person, or earn their attention. Attack. We lash out, pretend we don't care, or use anger as armor to mask the wound. But all of these reactions, while human and understandable, are symptoms of shame at work. They aren't about the present moment as much as they are about our past pain resurfacing. So what do? We get curious about the story, we name it, we say, this silence is making me feel unworthy. This isn't just about now. This feels like that time I was left out in school, or when my parents stopped talking to me when I disappointed them, or when I loved someone who made me feel invisible. Naming the story disarms it. It helps us see that the pain is real, but it isn't always truthful. Because here's the thing, being ignored does hurt, and that hurt is valid, but it doesn't define your worth. The silence of another person doesn't erase your value. You are not unlovable just because someone failed to show up. We all carry shame stories, but when we recognize them, we take back our power. We begin to see that while we can't always control how others treat us, we can control how deeply we let their actions determine our self-worth. And healing doesn't come from being noticed by everyone. It comes from finally noticing ourselves and realizing that no silence from the outside can be louder than the truth we choose to believe on the inside. When someone pulls away, when the messages stop coming, when the warmth fades and we're left holding a one-sided thread of a relationship, the instinct for many of us is to look inward, but not in the healthy, self-reflective way. We begin to wonder what we did wrong, where we failed, what part of ourselves wasn't enough to keep them close. It's a deeply human response. We are wired for connection. Our brains are biologically designed to seek attachment. So when that attachment is broken or withheld, especially without explanation, our nervous systems go into overdrive. Something must be wrong. I must be the problem. I must have done something to deserve this disconnection. But here's a truth that sounds simple yet is hard to live into. The absence of connection is not always about us. Sometimes it's not our story being written in the silence, it's theirs. Sometimes people pull away because they're emotionally unavailable and connection feels like a threat. Sometimes they retreat because they've never learned how to hold intimacy without fear or shame. Sometimes they're struggling with depression, anxiety, trauma, and their silence is about survival, not rejection. And sometimes they're simply not capable of giving what we hoped for, no matter how lovable, worthy, or available we are. It's hard to accept, but we have to remember other people's behavior is not always a reflection of our value. Sometimes it's a mirror of their own pain. Yet, even with this truth, there's a part of us that wants to fix it. We think, maybe if I'm more understanding, maybe if I give them more time, maybe if I'm more patient, more available, more forgiving, more easy to love, then they'll come back, then they'll choose me. But connection that depends on our self-erasure is not connection, it's performance. And love that we have to chase, especially in the face of persistent absence, is not love, it's hope masquerading as worthiness. It's vital that we learn to pause and ask, is this silence really about me, or is it simply falling on me? Because if we always internalize disconnection as a personal failure, we'll spend our lives shape-shifting, bending, hustling to avoid the sting of being left out, left behind, or left unseen. We'll keep rewriting ourselves to fit someone else's inability to show up. But what if we believed deeply that our need for connection isn't a burden? That our desire to be met, seen, heard, valued is not asking for too much? That sometimes the people we long to connect with are simply not in a place to meet us, and that this is about their story, not our unworthiness? Letting go of the belief that it's always our fault frees us. It frees us to stop chasing closed doors. It frees us to stop interpreting someone else's silence as evidence that we are too much, too needy, too intense, too broken. Simply, sometimes their inability to connect is simply a signpost. This is not your place to belong. And while that realization can be painful, it also makes room for something sacred, the space to find relationships that do meet us where we are, without us having to disappear to stay there. Because connection should never cost us our self-respect. And being worthy of love was never something we had to prove, especially when it comes from someone we care about, a friend who suddenly stops calling, a partner who withdraws without explanation, a parent who responds with cold distance. In those moments, silence doesn't feel neutral. It feels loud, it feels personal, and it feels like punishment. We want closure, we want a reason, we want the conversation, the apology, the explanation that ties things up neatly, something to make sense of what just happened. But instead, all we get is nothing, just space, just absence, just the unanswered question, what happened? It's in that void that our minds spiral. We fill in the gaps with our worst fears. We overanalyze the last text, the last conversation, the moment their tone changed or their energy shifted. We wonder if we were too much, too emotional, too needy, too something. But what if the silence is actually doing something we can't see right away? What if, instead of being a punishment, the silence is a mirror, showing us things we couldn't or didn't want to see when the noise of the relationship was still there? When the noise stops, the truth gets louder. In the absence of words, we start to feel the weight of things we had ignored, the imbalance in effort, the way we walked on eggshells, how often we questioned ourselves, how we mistook attention for affection or presence for partnership. We start to notice what we were tolerating. It's often in silence that we realize we were the only one reaching out. We were the one holding the relationship together. We were giving more than we were receiving. And we were investing in potential, not reality. That clarity can be painful, and yet it's essential. Because as long as we're caught in the noise, the endless cycle of trying, proving, explaining, chasing, we don't have the space to ask the bigger questions. Like, is this relationship actually healthy for me? Do I feel emotionally safe here? Am I respected or just needed? Is this mutual or is this maintenance? Silence strips away the distractions, and what's left is truth, sometimes messy, sometimes heartbreaking, but always liberating. And here's another layer. Clarity isn't always about the other person. Sometimes it's about us. In the silence, we also start to see ourselves more clearly, not through the lens of how others respond to us, but through our own unfiltered reflection. We begin to notice our own patterns of over-functioning in relationships, our fear of abandonment and how it drives our behavior, our tendency to confuse effort with worthiness, our longing to be chosen, and how much we've tied our value to someone else's attention. This clarity can be confronting. It can ask us to stop blaming the silence and start listening to what it's revealing. Because silence is not always an ending. Sometimes it's an invitation to choose ourselves, an invitation to reclaim our time, our energy, our boundaries, an invitation to stop knocking on closed doors and start building doors of our own. So yes, the silence hurts, but it also tells the truth. It tells us where we stand. It tells us who's willing to meet us in the middle and who expects us to carry the weight of connection alone. And maybe most importantly, it tells us this: when someone goes quiet, we no longer have to fight for clarity from them. We can find it and choose peace. Ourselves, when someone ignores us, when they go quiet, fade away, or withdraw without explanation, something deep inside us gets activated. And often it's not just the pain of the silence that stings, it's the urgency that rises up inside us, that tightening in our chest, that need to do something, say something, fix something. That urgency, that's the urge to chase validation. We want the other person to respond, not just so we can reconnect, but so we can feel okay again, so we can breathe, so we can tell ourselves, I matter, I'm not crazy, I'm not too much, I'm still worthy. We tell ourselves it's about resolution, but sometimes, if we're being honest, it's really about relief. Relief from the unbearable tension of not knowing where we stand, from the stories our mind is spinning, that we're being punished, that we've been discarded, that we're unimportant. But here's the trap. Validation that must be chased is never enough. Even if we get a text back, even if they say, I've just been busy, even if they give us crumbs of reassurance, those things rarely settle the storm inside. Because deep down we know the truth. If we had to chase it, beg for it, or prove we deserved it, it was never real safety to begin with. And let's be clear, the urge to chase is deeply human. It's survival driven. When we were children and a parent gave us the cold shoulder, we tried harder. We fawned. We became more pleasing, more accommodating. That's how many of us learned love. Perform well, be good enough, stay small, and maybe, just maybe, they won't leave. So when we're ignored now as adults, that old wiring kicks in. We feel that familiar ache and we move fast to soothe it. We over-explain, we send one more message, we replay conversations, we reach for anything that might make us feel in control again. But what we're really doing in those moments is abandoning ourselves. We make their attention the currency of our self-worth. We make their silence louder than our inner knowing. We ask someone else to tell us who we are when that answer was always ours to give. And here's the painful but liberating truth. Validation that you have to chase will never heal what's hurting. Because the real wound isn't the silence, it's the belief that we're only lovable if we're chosen by someone else. The real work is learning to stay with ourselves in the silence, to say, this hurts, and I don't need to contort myself to make it stop. We reclaim our power when we resist the urge to earn love. We heal when we stop proving and start honoring. We grow when we notice the old pattern rising and we pause instead of pursuing. Validation that is freely given is beautiful, but validation that we have to beg for is not connection, it's captivity. And we deserve more. So if you find yourself aching to send that message, to explain just one more time, to chase someone who keeps stepping back, take a breath. Put your hand over your heart and remember, I don't have to chase to be worthy. I don't have to convince someone to value me. I don't need their yes to validate my enoughness. Because the truth is, we don't need to be chosen by everyone. We need to choose ourselves, especially when others won't. There comes a moment after the silence, after the ache, after the spiral of self-doubt, when we realize that continuing to wait, to chase, to decode someone else's avoidance is no longer an act of love. It's an act of self-abandonment. And that's when something quietly, powerfully shifts. We stop reaching outward for approval, and we begin reaching inward for our own worth. Because here's the truth, our worth was never lost. It was just buried under the noise of trying to earn love from people who couldn't offer it. When we're ignored, overlooked, or dismissed, it can feel like our entire sense of self is under review. We think we need to prove something to show we were good enough to be chosen, valued, responded to. But that's not healing. That's reenactment. That's repeating old wounds with new faces. The real response, the true and most courageous response, is to reclaim our worth without permission, without apology, and without needing anyone else to agree. That means we stop waiting for an answer from someone who went quiet and start listening to the truth we've always known. We were never too much, we were never not enough, we were just in places where our light wasn't meant to be held. Reclaiming our worth doesn't always look loud. It often looks quiet, sacred, internal. It's walking away from conversations where you're only heard halfway. It's choosing not to text someone who only replies when it's convenient. It's resisting the urge to explain yourself again and again just to be understood. It's whispering to yourself, I matter, even if they don't show me that. Reclaiming your worth is not an act of arrogance. It's an act of restoration. It's pulling back the parts of yourself you've scattered in search of love and calling them home. It's knowing that someone else's inability to see you clearly does not mean you are unclear. It's believing deep in your bones that the absence of their affection doesn't make you less deserving of love. And here's what's beautiful. When you reclaim your worth, you start showing up differently. You stop performing, you stop pleading, you stop shrinking to fit inside relationships too small for your soul. You begin to walk through the world with quiet confidence, not because you've never been hurt, but because you've learned to stay rooted in your value, even in the presence of rejection. Because the truth is, we can't control whether someone chooses us, but we can choose ourselves again and again and again. That choice is the turning point. It's the boundary that says, I will no longer argue for my worth. It's the healing that says, I don't need closure to create peace. It's the freedom that says, I'm done chasing love where love isn't living. You don't need to convince anyone to love you. You only need to love yourself so fiercely that their silence no longer echoes louder than your truth. Reclaiming your worth isn't just the response, it's the revolution. Yes, it hurts. Of course it does, because we are wired for connection, and being dismissed or unseen cuts deep. But that pain, it's not weakness, it's information. It's data about what matters to you, about where your boundaries are, about what kind of love you long for and deserve. And in that silence, as hard as it is, there is a strange gift. It strips away illusion. It brings our shame stories into the light. It reveals what we've been tolerating and what we've been chasing. It teaches us the hardest, holiest lesson of all. Our worth is not up for negotiation. We don't need to shrink ourselves to fit into someone's comfort. We don't need to earn love through silence. We don't need to chase validation from people who disappear when things get real. The absence of connection doesn't always mean we failed. Sometimes it simply means we've outgrown something that was never meant to hold our full heart. And that's not rejection, that's redirection. So instead of reaching out one more time to someone who won't meet you, reach inward. Reclaim the parts of you that you gave away in your search for belonging. Wrap your arms around your own worth and say, even here, even now, especially now, I choose myself. Because being ignored may hurt, but how we respond, that's where our power lives. In your power, it's not in convincing anyone to come back. It's in knowing that you never needed to be chosen to be worthy. That you already are, always were, still are, and forever will be.